I thought the scar on my arm was just the result of a clumsy accident at my 33rd birthday dinner. My sister, Marin, had dropped a pot of boiling soup, screaming apologies before the steam even cleared. But accidents do not usually follow you home in the form of missing files and anonymous complaints at work. The burn was painful, but the realization that my own sister was trying to dismantle my life dollar by dollar was far worse. I turned 33 on a Tuesday, but I waited until Saturday to celebrate. My life in Briar Glen was built on that kind of delayed gratification. I was the sort of person who saved the best bite of the sandwich for last, who paid bills the day they arrived, and who believed that if you kept your head down and followed the rules, the world would generally leave you alone. I was wrong about that. The plan for the evening was modest, just the way I liked it. I had spent the morning cleaning my house, a 2-bedroom Craftsman that I had bought 3 years ago. It was not a mansion, but it was mine. I scrubbed the baseboards and polished the hardwood until the afternoon light caught the grain just right. I wanted everything to be perfect because, lately, the rest of my life felt like it was fraying at the edges. At Northlake Ledger Works, the accounting firm where I had worked for 5 years, I was known for being invisible in the most competent way possible. I was the person you went to when you wanted a spreadsheet reconciled down to the penny without any office gossip attached. But 3 days ago, a shadow had fallen over my desk. My manager, a nervous man named Greg with a penchant for tapping his pen against his teeth, had called me into his office. He did not look me in the eye when he slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a printout of an anonymous complaint filed through the company portal. The text accused me of improper client contact and hinted that I was soliciting side work during company hours. It was a lie, a flat, verifiable lie. But Greg had murmured something about perception and protocol, and needing to look into it. I had walked back to my desk with my heart hammering against my ribs, feeling the heavy, suffocating weight of being watched. That was why I needed tonight to be good. I needed to remind myself that my home was safe, that my family loved me, and that the chaos at work was just a clerical error that would sort itself out. I had invited 5 people: my mother, Ellen, my stepfather, Rick, my younger sister, Marin, and her latest boyfriend, a guy named Devoutly who I had met only once, and finally, Sarah and Ben, 2 friends from my department at Northlake who knew about the complaint and had promised to help me drink enough wine to forget it. The menu was specific. I had spent 6 hours braising short ribs and roasting root vegetables. My kitchen was small, a galley style that trapped heat, so I had sent a group text 3 days ago. Please do not bring any food. The counters are full, and I have everything covered. Just bring yourselves. Everyone arrived on time, except Marin. Mom and Rick came first. Mom kissed my cheek, her eyes immediately scanning the living room for dust I might have missed. You look tired. Audrey, she said, handing me a bottle of Pinot Grigio. Are you sleeping? You get those circles under your eyes when you worry too much. I am fine, Mom, I said, forcing a smile. Just busy with quarter-end reports. Rick clapped a hand on my shoulder. He was a big man who took up a lot of space and preferred to pretend that emotions did not exist. He moved straight to the living room to turn on the television, checking the score of a game I did not care about. Sarah and Ben arrived 10 minutes later, bringing a lightness that I desperately needed. Sarah squeezed my hand when I took her coat. Any update on the Greg situation? She whispered. I shook my head. Not yet. Let us not talk about it tonight. I want to pretend I'm a normal person who does not have an HR file. We settled into the living room. The smell of the short ribs was filling the house, rich and savory. For a moment, watching my friends laugh at something Rick said, I felt the tension in my neck loosen. This was what I wanted. Stability, normalcy. Then the front door banged open. Marin breezed in, bringing a gust of cold October air with her. She was 30 years old but carried herself with the chaotic energy of a teenager who had never been told no. Her boyfriend, whose name was actually distinct, trailed behind her like a lost puppy, carrying 2 bags of ice. Happy birthday to the responsible one, Marin shouted. She was holding a massive stainless steel stockpot with both hands, using oven mitts, Steam was venting from the lid. "Marin," I said, stepping forward. "I thought I said no food." "Oh, stop," she said, brushing past me toward the kitchen. "It is my famous potato soup. I wanted to contribute something special. You know how dry short ribs can get. I thought we needed a starter." My short ribs were not dry. They were falling off the bone, but I bit my tongue because it was my birthday, and I did not want to argue. "It smells great." "Marin," I lied. "Let me make space." I followed her into the narrow kitchen. It was already crowded with my prep bowls, the salad platter, and the resting meat. Marin plunked the heavy pot down on the only free corner of the counter, right next to the sink. "Oops, heavy," she laughed, peeling off the mitts. "Where's the ladle? I want to serve this right away while it is piping hot." "We can wait a bit," I said. "People are having drinks." "Nonsense," she said. "Soup waits for no one." She began rummaging through my drawers, clattering silverware. I watched her, feeling a familiar, prickly irritation. Marin had a way of taking up all the oxygen in a room. She had been in between jobs for 2 years, surviving on loans from Mom and Rick that everyone knew would never be repaid. She looked at my life, my house, my job, my savings, with a mixture of disdain and hunger. "Let us go do the toast first." Mom called from the living room. Marin huffed but abandoned the search for the ladle. "Come on, big sister, let us get you toasted." We gathered around the dining table. The room was warm, the lighting soft. Rick poured the wine. I stood at the head of the table, near the kitchen doorway. Sarah raised her glass. "To Audrey," she said. "The glue that holds the department together, and the only person I know who actually enjoys pivot tables. Happy 33rd. Everyone laughed. I smiled, looking down at my shoes. I hated being the center of attention, but this felt nice. "Safe. Speech," Rick boomed. "I do not have a speech," I said. "Just, thank you all for coming. It means a lot to have you here." I turned slightly to my left to set my wine glass down on the sideboard so I could start bringing out the plates. The sideboard was right next to the kitchen pass-through. I did not see Marin move. I only felt her presence behind me. A sudden shift in the air pressure. In a kitchen as small as mine, you learn to dance around people, to anticipate their movements, but Marin was not dancing. She was crowding. "Let me just get this soup," she said. Her voice was right in my ear. I was leaning forward, my arm extended to place the glass on a coaster. I was off balance, my weight on my right foot. "Wait, Marin, it is too tight," I started to say. I felt a hip bump against my lower back. It was not a hard shove, but it was solid, firm, enough to pitch me forward just an inch. Then, the world turned white. There was a clang of metal against granite, a sickening splash, and then a sound that I realized a second later was me screaming. The liquid hit my right forearm first, then splashed up across my bicep and over the curve of my shoulder. It was not just hot, it was a chemical assault. The soup was thick, creamy, and boiling. It clung to my skin like napalm. The pain was instantaneous and absolute. It bypassed my brain and went straight to my nervous system. A roaring, blinding shock that dropped me to my knees. "Oh my God!" Marin shrieked. I clutched my arm, gasping for air. My eyes squeezed shut. The heat was burrowing down, eating through the layers of skin. I could feel the wet, heavy weight of the potato soup soaking into my blouse, holding the heat against my flesh. "Get it off!" I choked out. "Get it off!" Chaos erupted. Ben was at my side instantly, grabbing my other arm. Sarah was shouting for water. "What happened?" Rick yelled, standing up but not moving. "She bumped me," Marin cried out, her voice high and frantic. I was holding the pot, and she stepped back right into me. I told her I was behind her. "Water!" Sarah screamed. "Get her to the sink!" Ben hauled me up. I stumbled toward the kitchen sink, my vision tunneling. The pain was a living thing now, a heartbeat of agony in my arm. Sarah turned on the faucet, blasting cold water. "Not ice cold!" Mom shouted. Suddenly in the doorway, "You will shock the skin. Tepid. Use tepid water." Sarah shoved my arm under the stream. The water hit the soup-coated skin, rinsing away the cream and potato chunks, revealing angry, blistering red flesh underneath. I bit my lip so hard I tasted copper. "Look at this mess," Mom said. I opened my eyes, tears blurring my vision. Mom was not looking at my arm. She was looking at the floor, where a puddle of soup was spreading across my hardwood. "Mom," I gasped. "Accidents happen," Rick said loudly, stepping into the kitchen and grabbing a roll of paper towels. "Everyone calm down. It is just a spill. It is not just a spill." "Rick," Sarah snapped, her voice trembling with rage. "Look at her arm." I looked down. The skin from my elbow to my shoulder was a furious, mottled crimson. Near the wrist, a large blister was already forming, rapidly filling with fluid. The skin on my shoulder, where the blouse had trapped the heat, looked waxy and pale. "I am so sorry," Marin wailed. She was standing in the corner of the kitchen, her hands pressed to her mouth. "I did not mean to. She just moved so fast. I could not speak. The pain was taking all my focus. But through the haze, a small, cold thought crystallized in the back of my mind. I had not moved back. I had been leaning forward. "We need to go to urgent care," Ben said, his voice grim. "This is a second-degree burn at least, maybe third. I do not want to ruin the party," I whispered, the absurdity of the statement hanging in the air. "Don't be a martyr, Audrey," Mom said, taking the paper towels from Rick and bending down to wipe the floor. "Go get it checked out. We will clean up here." I looked at Marin. She was not helping Mom clean. She was watching me. Her eyes were wide, glistening with tears. But behind the panic, there was a stillness. She was not looking at my face. She was looking at the burn. "I am so sorry, Audrey," she said again. Ben drove me to the Briar Glen Medical Center. Sarah sat in the back, her hand on my shoulder, whispering reassurances. The vibration of the car made my arm throb in sync with the engine. At the urgent care, the fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. It was Saturday night, so the waiting room was half full. But the triage nurse took one look at my arm and ushered me straight back. I sat on the crinkly paper of the exam table, shivering. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me cold and nauseous. A clinician named Nancy came in. She was an older woman with kind eyes and efficient hands. "Okay, let us take a look," Nancy said. She began to gently cut away the remains of my sleeve. I turned my head away, unable to watch. "Tell me what happened," she said. "I was at a dinner party." I stammered. "My sister. She was carrying a pot of soup. I think I bumped her." Nancy paused. I felt her gloved fingers lightly tracing the edge of the burn. "You bumped her?" she asked. "Yes." I stepped back. "I think—" Nancy hummed. A low, skeptical sound. "The spill pattern is interesting," she said quietly, almost to herself. "What do you mean?" I asked, turning back to look. "Usually, if you bump someone holding a pot, the liquid sloshes out in a wave, often hitting the lower body or the hands," she said. "Or if it hits the arm, it is a splash. This looks like a pore." "A pore? See how it is concentrated here on the top of the forearm and shoulder?" she said, pointing with a sterile gauze pad. "And the way it ran down, it suggests the source was high and tilted directly over the limb for a split second. It is odd for a simple bump." I stared at the angry red map on my skin. A pore. The image of Marin standing behind me flashed in my mind. The hip check, the sensation of being crowded. "No," I said, my voice sounding hollow. "It was an accident. My sister. She is just clumsy." Nancy looked at me. It was a look I had seen before, usually on teachers when I tried to explain why my homework was missing. It was a look that said she knew I was lying to myself. "Okay, honey," she said gently. "We are going to get this cleaned up and dressed. It is going to hurt, but we will manage it." They gave me a shot for the pain and wrapped my arm in thick layers of gauze and Sylvadene cream. They gave me a prescription for painkillers and a list of instructions on how to change the dressings. When I walked out to the waiting room, Ben and Sarah stood up. "How is it?" Ben asked. Bad, I said, but I will live. We drove back to my house in silence. When we arrived, Mom and Rick were gone. Maren and her boyfriend were gone. The kitchen was clean. The pot was washed and drying in the rack. The floor had been mopped. The only evidence that anything had happened was the smell of bleach masking the scent of short ribs, and the silence where a party should have been. Sarah stayed the night, sleeping on my couch, just in case I needed help. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, my arm propped up on 3 pillows. The pain medication made my thoughts soupy and disjointed. A pore. It suggests the source was high and tilted directly over the limb. I closed my eyes, trying to push the nurse's voice away. Maren was selfish. She was irresponsible. But she was my sister. She would not hurt me on purpose. Not like this. The next day, Sunday, was a blur of discomfort. My arm felt heavy and tight, the skin screaming every time I moved. My phone started buzzing at 8 in the morning. Audrey, are you okay? I haven't slept all night. I feel so terrible. Maren, please answer me. Mom said you went to urgent care. Is it bad? Maren, I made you a playlist of soothing songs. I'm just crying my eyes out here. Maren. Then the gifts started arriving. First, a delivery of expensive cupcakes, which I could not eat because the sugar made me nauseous. Then, a bouquet of flowers that was far too large for my coffee table. Then, a Grubhub delivery for lunch. She is really trying to make up for it, Sarah said, bringing in the flowers. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea with my left hand. Is she? Look at all this stuff, Sarah said. I looked at the phone again. Maren had sent a voice note. I pressed play. Audrey, hey, it's me. I need to know you're not mad. It was such a freak thing. Mom said you were standing right in the way, and I tried to dodge, but the pot was so heavy. Anyway, text me back. I need to know what the doctor said. Did they say how long it will take to heal? Did they write down exactly what happened? I'm just worried about scarring. I replayed the last part. Did they write down exactly what happened? She did not ask if I was in pain. She did not ask if I needed help changing the bandages. She asked what was written down. That is weird, Sarah said, frowning as the message ended. What is? She is worried about the medical record. Maybe she is scared of getting sued, I said, trying to joke. Sarah did not laugh. Audrey, last night, Ben and I talked about it. What? It was weird. She said, the way she was standing. I was looking right at you guys. You didn't step back. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the burn. What did you see? I saw her move in, Sarah said slowly. She got really close, and then it looked like she tipped the pot before you even touched her. I stared at the bandage on my arm. The nurse's words. Sarah's words. They were converging into a picture I did not want to see. You think she did it on purpose? I whispered. I don't know, Sarah said. That sounds crazy, right? Why would she burn her own sister? But, Audrey, you should keep those texts. I felt a surge of defensiveness. This is Maren we are talking about. She cries when she steps on a bug. People change when they are desperate, Sarah said darkly. And you have told me she is always asking for money. I shook my head. No, she is just frantic because she feels guilty. But later that afternoon, after Sarah went home, I sat alone in the quiet house. My arm throbbed. I looked at the pile of gifts Maren had sent. It felt performative. It felt like evidence. I walked over to the trash can in the kitchen. I remembered the nurse saying the spill pattern was odd. I remembered the nurse documenting it. I took my phone out. I opened a new note. I typed the date, October 18th, birthday dinner, scalding incident. I wrote down everything I could remember, the text telling her not to bring food, the way she insisted on bringing the pot to the kitchen, the hip check, the words she used afterward, blaming me immediately. Then I took a picture of my arm. I unwrapped the gauze, gritting my teeth against the stinging air, and photographed the blisters. They were ugly, fluid-filled bubbles rising from angry red skin. I saved the photos to a hidden folder. I told myself I was just being paranoid. I told myself I would delete them in a week when this all blew over. But it did not blow over. On Monday, I tried to work from home. Typing with one hand, it was agonizingly slow. At 2:00, my email pinged. It was a calendar invite from HR. Subject: Formal review regarding incident report 4429. My stomach dropped. The anonymous complaint. I dialed into the Zoom call. Greg was there, along with the HR director. A woman named Linda who always smiled with her mouth but never her eyes. Audrey. Linda began. We have received additional information regarding the complaint filed against you. What information? I asked. The original complaint alleged improper client contact. Linda said. We now have a follow-up statement detailing specific times you were allegedly absent from your desk to conduct personal business. I am never absent, I said, my voice rising. You can check my keystroke logs. The report cites specific dates. Linda said, last Tuesday, between 1 and 2, last Friday, the same time, and it mentions that you were seen taking calls on your personal cell phone in the stairwell regarding private financial transfers. I froze. Tuesday and Friday between 1 and 2. Those were my lunch hours. I sat in my car during those times to listen to podcasts and eat my sandwich. No one at work knew I did that. I never told anyone, except Maren. I flashed back to a conversation 2 weeks ago. Maren had called me, crying about her car payment. Where are you? She had asked. I am in my car, eating lunch. I had replied, I do this every day to get some peace. Oh, really? Every day? That is so sad. Audrey, a cold knot tightened in my chest. Linda, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Who filed this complaint? You know we cannot disclose that, Linda said, but given the specificity of the details, we are opening a formal investigation. We will need to audit your email and phone logs. Until this is resolved, we are placing you on administrative leave, paid, for now. Administrative leave? I felt like the floor was dissolving. I have never done anything wrong. We have to follow the process, Greg said, looking at his desk. I ended the call and sat in the silence of my living room. My career, the one thing I had built brick by brick, was crumbling because someone knew I sat in my car on Tuesdays. Only Maren knew that. But why? Why would she sabotage my job? It didn't make sense. If I lost my job, I couldn't loan her money. Not that I had been doing much of that lately anyway. I stood up, restless and agitated. My arm burned. I needed to find my employment contract. I needed to see what my rights were regarding administrative leave. I walked into the guest bedroom, which doubled as my home office. I had a filing cabinet in the closet where I kept all my important documents, birth certificate, deed to the house, tax returns, and employment records. I opened the closet door. The filing cabinet was a beige metal 2-drawer unit. I always kept it locked. The key was hidden in a hollowed-out book on the shelf above it. A copy of Jane Eyre. I reached for the book. It was there. I opened it. The key was there. I breathed a sigh of relief. Paranoia. Audrey, you are spiraling. I took the key and unlocked the top drawer. It slid open with a smooth metallic slide. The hanging folders were color-coded, green for financial, red for medical, blue for personal. Everything looked neat, but as I reached for the blue section, I paused. I was meticulous about my filing. The plastic tabs were always aligned in a staggered zigzag pattern. Left, center, right, left, center, right. The folder labeled Deed Mortgage was in the center position, but the folder behind it, Insurance Policies, which should have been in the right position, was also in the center. It had been moved. I pulled the deed folder out. It felt light. I opened it. The deed was there. The mortgage statements were there, but the edges of the papers were not aligned. They were shuffled, like a deck of cards that had been hastily put back together. I checked the next folder, bank statements. Again, the papers were out of order. October was on top of September, but August was missing entirely. Someone had been in here. I looked at the lock on the cabinet. It wasn't broken. That meant someone had used the key. I stepped back, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Who had been in my house? The party, Maren arriving late, the soup, the chaos. "We will clean up here," Mom had said. Mom and Rick had stayed behind while I went to the hospital. Marin had stayed for a while too, before leaving. Had Marin gone into the guest room while I was getting my skin scrubbed raw at urgent care? I looked at the drawer again. Nothing obvious seemed to be missing. My passport was there. My social security card was there. But then I noticed something in the very back of the drawer, a small manila envelope where I kept the paperwork for the community trust Dad had set up years ago. It was a small thing, barely any money in it, mostly just a vehicle for charitable giving that I managed. I pulled it out. The metal clasp on the back was bent, not folded down neatly, but bent upward, as if it had been ripped open in a hurry. I opened it. The documents inside were upside down. I stood in the center of my guest room, clutching the envelope with my good hand. The pain in my right arm seemed to pulsate in time with the realization dawning on me. The scalding wasn't an accident. It was a distraction. She burned me to get me out of the house. She burned me so she could have 45 minutes alone with my filing cabinet while Mom and Rick were busy mopping up soup. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the painkillers. This wasn't just jealousy. This wasn't just sisterly drama. This was a heist. And I was the bank. I closed the drawer and locked it. I put the key in my pocket instead of the book. Then I walked to the living room and checked the front door locks. I was alone in the house, but for the first time in 33 years, the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like a held breath. I looked at my bandaged arm. I remembered the nurse's voice, a pore. I picked up my phone and opened the camera roll. I looked at the picture of my blistered skin. "Okay, Marin," I whispered to the empty room. I didn't know what she was looking for. I didn't know what she had found. But I knew one thing. She thought I was weak. She thought I was the nice, boring sister who would cry and forgive and let it go because family is family. She was right about the boring part, but she was wrong about the rest. I went to the kitchen, opened my laptop, and started a new spreadsheet. Row 1, Column A, Incident Timeline. I began to type. Living with a severe burn was an education in humiliation. I learned very quickly that the world was not designed for people who could not lift their right arm above their waist. Showering became a logistical nightmare involving plastic wrap, medical tape, and a level of contortion that left me breathless and shivering on the bath mat. Dressing was worse. Bras were impossible. Zippers were enemies. I spent the first week in oversized t-shirts and yoga pants, looking like a phantom in my own home. The physical pain was a constant, thrumming baseline, a deep, hot ache that spiked into sharp stabs whenever the nerves reconnected or the skin stretched. But the emotional toll was heavier. I felt exposed, weak, and that weakness was exactly what Marin was counting on. She showed up on Tuesday morning, letting herself in with the spare key I kept under the mat. I was in the kitchen, trying to open a jar of peanut butter by pinning it between my knees and twisting with my left hand. I looked up, sweaty and frustrated, to find Marin standing in the doorway, holding a latte and a bag of bagels. "Here, let me get that," she said, her voice dripping with that cloying sweetness she used when she wanted something. "You really should not be straining yourself. Audrey." She took the jar from me and popped it open with an effortless twist. The sound of the vacuum seal breaking felt like an insult. "Thanks," I muttered, taking the jar back. "I just wanted to check on you," she said, setting the coffee down on the counter. "I know you are on leave from work, so I figured you might be lonely. Plus, I wanted to help with the house. It must be so hard to keep things tidy with that arm." Her eyes flicked to the heavy bandaging. There was no guilt in her gaze, only a clinical curiosity. "I am fine. Marin," I said, "I have a system." "Clearly," she laughed, gesturing to the stack of mail I had left on the dining table. "It is piling up. Let me sort it for you." "No," I said, too quickly. I moved to block her path, but the sudden motion sent a jolt of fire through my shoulder. I winced, grabbing the counter for support. "See?" she said, shaking her head. "You are pushing too hard. Just sit down. Eat a bagel. I will just organize the bills so you do not miss anything. You know how spacey you have been lately." I froze. "Spacey?" "Yeah," she said, casually flipping through an envelope from the water company. Mom said you forgot her birthday last year, and now this accident with the soup. It is just like you to be in your head and not paying attention to your surroundings. I did not forget Mom's birthday, I said, my voice tight. I sent her a gift card and called her. Did you? Marin asked, not looking up. Huh. Maybe I am remembering wrong. But you have been so forgetful lately. Remember when you lost your car keys at Christmas? I did not lose them. You moved them to the mantel. Marin laughed again. A light, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. If that makes you feel better. Odds. I am just saying, with the pain meds and the stress, you need someone to keep you on track. She was rewriting reality in real time. It was subtle, just a shifting of the narrative by a few degrees, but it was effective. If she said it enough times, and if I was tired enough, maybe I would start to believe it. Maybe I was clumsy, maybe I was forgetful, but then I watched her. She was not just sorting the mail. She was reading the return addresses. She was holding the envelopes up to the light. She lingered over a letter from my bank, her thumb tracing the logo. I walked over and took the stack from her hand. I can handle the mail. Marin, thank you for the bagels. She looked at me, her expression hardening for a fraction of a second before the smile snapped back into place. Just trying to help. Big sister, you do not have to be so defensive. She stayed for 2 hours. She moved my laptop from the coffee table to the desk, claiming it was safer, but later I found the lid slightly askew. She asked for the Wi-Fi password again, claiming her phone had forgotten it. Every time I turned around, she was hovering near my purse, near my files, near the places where I kept the architecture of my life. When she finally left, I locked the door and slid the deadbolt home. I leaned against the wood, heart hammering. I felt like I was under siege in my own living room. My phone rang. It was Mom. Audrey. Honey, how is the arm? She asked. It hurts. Mom, I said, walking to the window to watch Marin's car pull away. It hurts a lot. Well, accidents happen, she said, using the phrase that had become the family motto since Saturday. You just need to focus on healing. Listen, I was talking to Rick, and he thinks we should submit the urgent care bill to his insurance too, just in case. Can you send me a copy of the discharge paperwork? Why? I asked. I have my own insurance. It is covered, just for records. Mom said, and, just to see what they wrote. About the cause. The cause? I repeated. Well, Marin is worried, Mom said, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper. She is worried that the doctor might have misunderstood and blamed her. She is so sensitive. Audrey, she's been crying for days. If the paperwork says it was an accident, it would really help calm her down. I tightened my grip on the phone. My sister scalds me with boiling soup, and my mother is calling to manage my sister's feelings. The doctor wrote what she saw. Mom, I said, I am not sending the paperwork. Audrey, do not be difficult. I am not being difficult. I am being a 33-year-old woman who handles her own medical files. There was a silence on the other end, a disappointed, heavy silence that I knew well. You are holding a grudge, Mom said finally. It is not becoming. Marin is trying to help you, and you are pushing everyone away. I hung up. I did not have the energy to explain that I wasn't pushing them away. I was trying to keep them from picking my pockets. The next day, Wednesday, the digital blow landed. I received an email from Linda in HR. Please see attached for your review regarding the investigation. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF containing the evidence of my alleged misconduct. There was a log of times I was away from my desk, which I had expected. But on the third page, there was a screenshot. It was an image of my Outlook calendar, not the shared one that my team could see, but my private, color-coded personal calendar where I tracked my appointments and reminders. The screenshot showed an entry for 2 months ago. Consultation with Barton Finch, 2:00 p.m. Barton Finch was a headhunting agency. I had spoken to them once, briefly, about a potential job opening, but I had never pursued it. I had put it on my calendar just to block the time. The problem was not the entry. The problem was that no one, absolutely no one, had access to my private calendar view except me. I stared at the screen, the pixels blurring. To take this screenshot, someone had to be logged into my computer, or they had to have my phone unlocked and open to the calendar app. I looked at the timestamp on the bottom of the screenshot. It was cropped, but the date was visible in the corner of the desktop taskbar. October 18th, my birthday. The screenshot had been taken on the night of the party. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. Maren had been in my house. My laptop had been on the desk in the guest room, probably in sleep mode. I didn't have a complicated password, just my childhood street name and the year I was born. Maren knew both. She had burned me, sent me to the hospital, and while I was gone, she had logged into my laptop. She had gone through my calendar, found something incriminating, or something that looked like I was job hunting on company time, and screenshotted it. Then she had sent it to whoever was filing these complaints. Why? Why go to such lengths to get me fired? If I lost my job, I lost my income. If I lost my income, I might have to dip into savings, or maybe if I was unemployed and unstable, I would be easier to control. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. I needed to lock everything down. I spent the next 4 hours undergoing a digital purge. I changed every password I owned: email, banking, social media, work portals, utilities. I generated random strings of characters that even I couldn't remember, writing them down in a physical notebook that I hid inside the lining of my winter coat. I enabled 2-factor authentication on everything. My phone started pinging with 6-digit codes, a constant rhythm of security, but digital walls didn't feel like enough. I needed eyes. I drove to the electronics store one town over, steering with my left hand, the pain in my right arm a dull roar. I bought a small, unobtrusive indoor security camera. It was a cheap model, a little black cube that connected to Wi-Fi and recorded to the cloud. When I got home, I set it up on the top shelf of the bookcase in the living room, nestled between a fern and a stack of hardcover novels. It had a clear view of the living room, the hallway to the bedrooms, and the entrance to the kitchen. I checked the feed on my phone. The picture was grainy but clear. I could see my own living room, empty and silent. I felt a wave of nausea. This was my sister. I was setting up surveillance equipment to catch my sister. "You are paranoid," a voice in my head whispered. "Mom is right. You are overreacting." But then I looked at the burn on my arm. The skin was peeling now, revealing raw, pink flesh. It was ugly and real. I wasn't paranoid. I was wounded. On Thursday, the phone call started. I was in the kitchen, trying to make toast, when my cell rang. Unknown number, usually. I ignored them, but I was on edge. "Hello? Is this Audrey Lewis?" a woman's voice asked. Brisk, professional. "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Sarah from Crestmore Title and Escrow. We are just calling to verify the forwarding address for the deed transfer documents. We had a request come in to send the final packet to a P.O. box in Briar Glen, but the signature looked a little smudged. We just wanted to confirm with the homeowner verbally." The room seemed to tilt. "Deed transfer?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What deed transfer?" "For the property at 422 Elm Street," the woman said. "Your home." "I am not selling my home," I said, gripping the counter. "I never requested a deed transfer." "Who submitted this?" There was a pause on the line. The clicking of a keyboard stopped. "You didn't submit the quitclaim deed request on Tuesday?" the woman asked, her tone shifting from routine to cautious. "No," I shouted. "I absolutely did not. Who are you? Who authorized this?" "Ma'am, if this wasn't you, then we have a problem. I am going to cancel this request immediately and flag the file." "Wait," I said. "Who sent it? Was it a woman?" "I cannot disclose that information over the phone due to privacy regulations," she said, her voice turning robotic. "I will note your file that the request was fraudulent. Have a good day." The line went dead. I stood there, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. A quitclaim deed. Someone was trying to transfer the ownership of my house. I dialed the number back immediately, but it went to a generic voicemail. "You have reached Crestmore Title." I went to my computer and Googled them. They were a real company, legitimate, but the request was fake. I logged into my credit monitoring service. My hands were trembling so badly I mistyped my new password twice. Finally, the dashboard loaded. Credit score, 780. No new accounts. I exhaled. Okay, maybe they hadn't gotten far. Then I scrolled down to the inquiries section. There, dated 2 days ago, was a soft inquiry. These didn't affect your score, but they showed that someone was looking at your report. The inquiry was from Apex Lending Solutions. I didn't know Apex Lending Solutions. I hadn't applied for a loan. I hadn't bought a car. Someone was shopping for credit in my name. They were trying to leverage my assets, my house, my credit score, to get cash. And they had enough of my information to get the ball rolling. My social security number, my address, my birth date, the open drawer, the file folder. Marin didn't just look at my files. She must have photographed them. She had my identity in her pocket. I felt a cold rage settle over me. It was heavier than the fear. It was solid and sharp. They weren't just trying to hurt me. They were trying to erase me. They wanted to steal the life I had built so they could burn it down for cash. That evening, Marin came over again. I watched her walk up the driveway on my phone screen, the camera feed showing her checking her reflection in the side mirror of her car before she knocked. I opened the door. I forced a smile. It felt like wearing a mask made of lead. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she said, breezy as ever. "I brought pizza. I figured you didn't want to cook." She walked in, kicking off her shoes. She looked tired, her makeup a little smudged. She flopped onto the sofa, right in the view of the hidden camera. "God, what a day," she groaned. "What is wrong?" I asked, sitting in the armchair opposite her. "Money," she sighed. "It is always money. My landlord is being a jerk. He says if I am late one more time, he is starting eviction proceedings. Can you believe that? After I have lived there for 2 years? That sounds stressful," I said neutrally. It is just bad luck, you know? It follows me. I try so hard. But nothing ever sticks. The car breaks down. The job falls through. The rent goes up." She looked at me, her eyes wet. "You are so lucky. Audrey, you do not get it. I work hard. Marin," I said gently, "it is not just luck." She bristled. Sitting up straighter, the sadness vanished, replaced by a flash of that same resentment I had seen at the party. "Don't give me the lecture," she snapped. "It must be nice to sit in your paid-for house with your steady job and judge everyone else. You always land on your feet. Even when you get burned, you have insurance and savings and everyone feeling sorry for you." I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the envy radiating off her like heat. She didn't see me as a sister. She saw me as a resource she had been denied access to. "I am going to get some water," I said. Standing up, "Do you want some?" "Sure," she grunted, pulling her phone out. I walked into the kitchen. I did not get water. Instead, I leaned against the fridge and opened the camera app on my phone. I watched the live feed, in the living room. Marin waited until I was out of sight. Then, she moved. She didn't go for my purse this time. She went for the side table next to the sofa. It was a small antique cabinet where I kept a lockbox containing some petty cash and a few spare keys. It wasn't the heavy-duty filing cabinet, but it was locked. On the screen, I saw Marin crouch down. She opened the cabinet door. She pulled out the metal cash box. She tried the lid, locked. She pulled a bobby pin from her hair and jiggled it in the lock. She was clumsy, frustrated. It didn't open. "Damn it," I saw her mouth whisper. She looked toward the kitchen, checking for me. Then she pulled out her phone. She held the lockbox up and took 3 photos of it, top, side, and the lock mechanism itself. Then she started typing furiously, texting. I watched her thumbs fly across the screen. She put the box back, closed the cabinet, and sat back on the sofa, picking up a slice of pizza just as I walked back into the room. I held the glass of water, my hand shaking slightly. I had her on video attempting to break into a lockbox in my home. "Here is your water," I said, setting it down. Thanks, she said, taking a bite of pizza. So, did you hear back from HR yet? I am so worried about your job. Audrey, I sat down. I needed to know how far she would go. Marin, I said, keeping my voice soft. I have been thinking. Yeah? About the party. And the soup. She stopped chewing. Her eyes narrowed slightly. What about it? I have been having these flashbacks, I said, playing the part of the confused victim. I keep remembering you standing behind me, and I feel like maybe it wasn't an accident. Marin put the pizza down, her face transformed, the concern evaporated, replaced by a look of profound offense. Excuse me? She said. I saw the way the soup spilled. Marin, it poured. It didn't splash. And now, with the weird stuff happening at work and things moving around in my house, I feel like something is going on. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she let out a short, incredulous laugh. Wow, she said. Wow, Audrey, I knew you were stressed. But this is actually crazy. I am not crazy. I said, You are accusing your own sister of burning you on purpose? She said, her voice rising. Do you hear yourself? You are paranoid. Since the burn, you have been acting so weird. Hiding in your house, snapping at Mom, staring at everyone like they are enemies. She stood up, pacing the room, performing for an audience she didn't know was there. I come over here to help you, to bring you food, and you accuse me of assault? You need help, Audrey, like professional help. The pain meds are messing with your head. She was good. She was so good. She took my valid suspicion and twisted it into a symptom of mental instability. If I told anyone else what I thought, they would sound exactly like her. Audrey is losing it. I looked at the camera lens, hidden on the bookshelf. I knew it was recording every word. Sit down. Marin, I said. No, I am leaving, she said, grabbing her purse. I am not going to sit here and be insulted. You call me when you are ready to apologize. She stormed to the door. And by the way, she spat. Turning back, if you lose your job, do not come crying to me. You are pushing everyone away who actually cares about you. She slammed the door. I sat in the silence, the echo of the slam ringing in my ears. I pulled up the app on my phone. I rewound the footage. I watched her try to pick the lock. I watched her take the photos. I watched her text. I zoomed in on the moment she was texting. The resolution wasn't high enough to read the screen, but I could see the rhythm of it. She wasn't just sending a casual message. She was sending data. I saved the clip. Then I saved it again to a cloud drive. My phone buzzed. A text from Marin. I can't believe you. I'm literally shaking. Do not talk to me until you get your head straight. I didn't reply. I walked over to the cabinet she had tried to open. I took the lockbox out. I carried it to the kitchen and put it on the counter. I went to the junk drawer and found the key. I opened the box. Inside was $500 in emergency cash and the spare key to my car. I took the cash out. I took the key out. I left the box empty. Then I went to my laptop. I opened the spreadsheet I had started on Sunday. Row 15, October 22nd, 7:45 p.m. Marin attempted access to personal lockbox. Photographed lock mechanism. Video evidence secured. I looked at the screen. The pattern was undeniable now. The HR sabotage, the deed transfer attempt, the credit inquiry, the physical intrusion. It was a coordinated attack. Marin wasn't working alone. The person she was texting, the person who needed photos of the lock, the person who needed the soft inquiry to go through, was guiding her. Who was it? Her boyfriend? He seemed too dim for this kind of financial maneuvering. Someone else. I remembered the financial advisor Mom had mentioned a few weeks ago. A friend of a friend who was helping Marin get her life together. I needed to know who was on the other end of those texts. I looked at my arm. The burn throbbed, a steady, rhythmic reminder of the price I had already paid. They wanted me to be the crazy sister, the unstable one, the one who needed a conservator, or a power of attorney, or just a little help managing her assets. I closed the laptop. If they wanted crazy, I wouldn't give it to them. I would give them something much worse. I would give them Audrey Lewis, the accountant. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the family law attorney Sarah had recommended. It was late, but I left a voicemail. My name is Audrey Lewis. I believe I am the victim of identity theft and financial fraud orchestrated by a family member. I have video evidence. I need to know what my next move is. Please call me back. I hung up. I turned off the lights in the living room, leaving only the small green LED of the camera glowing in the dark. I wasn't safe in my own home. I wasn't safe in my own family. But I was awake now, and I was keeping receipts. The law office of Elias Thorne was located in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a donut shop, the kind of place you would drive past 1,000 times without seeing. It smelled of stale coffee and old paper, but Sarah had sworn by him. She said he was the kind of lawyer who didn't bill for every sneeze and who understood that family law was usually 90% psychology and 10% statute. I sat in a faux leather chair that squeaked every time I shifted my weight. My right arm was in a sling now, not because the doctor required it, but because the weight of the bandages made my shoulder ache if I let it hang for too long. So, let me get this straight, Elias said, leaning back in his chair. He was a man in his 60s with a face that looked like crumpled parchment and eyes that were terrifyingly sharp. Your sister scalded you with boiling soup. While you were in the hospital, you believe she searched your home. Since then, you have had attempted identity theft, weird credit inquiries, and someone trying to reroute your mail. That is the short version. I said, and now you want to know how to make it stop without starting World War III, he said. I looked at my lap. I do not want to sue her. Mr. Thorne, she is my sister, my mother. If I sue Marin, I lose my mother. I just want to know how to protect myself. I want to know what they are after. Elias took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Ms. Lewis, people who stage accidents, and based on the burn pattern you described, I am inclined to agree that this was likely not an accident, are not looking for a quick $100, they are looking for leverage, or total control. He leaned forward, his voice dropping an octave. If someone is trying to access your medical records and your financial data, they are building a case for something. Maybe they want to prove you are incompetent. Maybe they want power of attorney. Maybe they just want to know where the money is so they can forge a signature later. What do? I asked. Freeze everything, he said. The credit bureaus, obviously, but also call your banks and put a verbal password on your accounts. Tell your doctors no records are to be released to anyone but you, in person, with ID, and document every single interaction. He paused, looking at me gravely. But the most important thing is this. Do not confront them yet. Why not? I asked. I have video of her trying to break into my lockbox. Because you do not know the endgame, he said. If you confront her now, she will deny it, gaslight you, and then change her tactics. She will go deeper underground. If you want to stop this, you need to let them think you are clueless. You need to let them make a mistake. He handed me a card. Be boring. Audrey, be the injured, tired, slightly confused victim they want you to be, and watch them. They will get impatient. And when they get impatient, they will get sloppy. I left his office feeling colder than when I went in. The strategy made sense, but it required a level of acting I wasn't sure I possessed. I had to pretend to trust the people who were hunting me. I drove home, my mind racing. What were they looking for? I didn't have a fortune. My house had equity, yes, and I had a decent 401k, but nothing that would justify a complex scheme involving a fake financial advisor and staged bodily harm. Unless I was missing something, I spent the afternoon sitting on my living room floor. Surrounded by the contents of my filing cabinet, I had moved everything to a plastic bin that I now kept in the trunk of my car. Terrified to leave anything in the house, I went through every paper, tax returns, insurance policies, car title. Then I found the gap. It was in the file for my late father. He had died 5 years ago, leaving everything to Mom, except for one small thing. He had set up a charitable trust, the Holleridge Community Trust. It wasn't huge. It held a life insurance policy and some old stocks. The purpose of the trust was to make small annual grants to local libraries. Dad had made me the trustee. He said Mom wasn't good with details and Marin, well, he never said it out loud, but he knew Marin would spend the principal on a new car within a week. I hadn't thought about the trust in months. I just filed the quarterly statements and signed the tax forms once a year. I looked at the file. The most recent statement was missing. I closed my eyes. Visualizing the drawer before the accident, I remembered seeing the Holleridge logo, a green pine tree, on an envelope in September. It was gone. I scrambled for my laptop. I searched my email for Holleridge. There it was, a notification from 3 days ago, buried in my spam folder. Subject: verification code for account access. I hadn't requested a code. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I dialed the number for the Holleridge administrative office. It was a small operation, run by a woman named Mrs. Higgins, who had known my father. Holleridge Community Trust. Mrs. Higgins chirped. Mrs. Higgins, it is Audrey Lewis. I said, "Oh, Audrey. Hello, dear. How are you?" "I am fine." I said, "Listen, I am calling because I got a weird email about a verification code. I just wanted to make sure everything is secure on the account." "Oh, yes," Mrs. Higgins said brightly. "We got that sorted out. When you called on Tuesday, we updated the mailing address like you asked." The room went silent. The only sound was the blood rushing in my ears. "When I called on Tuesday?" I repeated slowly. "Yes, dear, well, the woman said she was you. Said you had moved temporarily because of a medical issue? To an apartment in East Briar Glen?" I gripped the phone. Tuesday. Tuesday was when Marin had come over with bagels. Tuesday was when she had helped me with my mail. "Mrs. Higgins," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm. "That was not me." There was a pause. "What?" "That was not me." I said clearly, "I have not moved. I did not authorize an address change. Please tell me you did not send any documents to that new address." "Oh my heavens!" Mrs. Higgins gasped. "I sent the quarterly distribution check and the beneficiary update forms yesterday." Beneficiary update forms. That was it. That was the endgame. They didn't just want the cash flow. They wanted to change the beneficiary of the trust. If they did that, and then, what? Removed me as trustee? Proved I was incompetent? Cancel the check. "Mrs. Higgins," I said, "cancel it immediately and flag the account. No changes unless I am there in person with a notary. Do you understand?" Yes, of course." "Audrey, I am so sorry. She sounded just like you. She had your social security number and your mother's maiden name." I hung up. I felt sick. Marin had impersonated me. That was a felony. I sat there in the fading light, the pain in my arm throbbing in time with my pulse. Marin knew about the trust, but she shouldn't have known the account details. Dad had kept it private. Unless Mom told her. The betrayal twisted in my gut like a knife. Mom knew I was the trustee. If Marin was making a play for the Holleridge money, Mom had to be involved, or at least, she had to be the source of the information. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my cousin. "Jessica. Hey, Audrey. Just heard from Marin. I am so sorry you are going through a hard time. If you need someone to talk to, I am here. Mental health is nothing to be ashamed of." I stared at the screen. Mental health? I called Jessica. "Hey, Jess," I said, "what did Marin tell you?" "Oh, Audrey," Jessica said, her voice dripping with pity. "She just said, about the accident. How you got confused and pushed her, and how you have been spiraling since then. She said you are paranoid and locking yourself in the house. We are all just worried about you. She is telling people I pushed her?" I asked, my voice flat. "She said you guys were arguing about money and you shoved her, and the soup fell. She is really torn up about it. Audrey, she feels guilty for even fighting with you." I hung up on Jessica, too. So that was the narrative. I was unstable. I was violent. I was spiraling. It was a perfect cover. If I tried to report Marin for fraud now, the family would say, "Oh, poor Audrey. She is delusional. She attacked her sister and now she is making up stories. I needed to scream. I wanted to drive over to Marin's apartment and shake her until the truth fell out. But then I heard Elias Thorne's voice in my head. They want a reaction. Do not give it to them. If I exploded now, I proved their point. I took a deep breath. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, pale. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun because I couldn't style it with one hand. I looked like a victim. Good, I whispered. Let them think it. 2 days later, the invitation came. It was Mom calling this time. Her voice was bright, too bright, like she was trying to sell me a timeshare. Audrey, honey, listen, I have been thinking. We need to clear the air. This tension is just awful for everyone. I am not the one creating tension. Mom, I said. I know, she soothed. But Marin is miserable. She feels like you hate her. We are going to have a family dinner on Friday. Just a quiet night, pot roast. Rick will make his mashed potatoes. Please come. I hesitated. I knew I shouldn't go. Every instinct screamed that it was a trap, but then she added the kicker. And I invited a friend of the family. She said, Mr. Sterling. He is a financial advisor. He has been helping Rick and me with our retirement planning, and he has been giving Marin some great advice on budgeting. I thought maybe he could answer some questions for you. 2. Since you have been so stressed about work, Mr. Sterling, the advisor, this was it. The ambush. I would love to come. Mom, I said. Friday night arrived with a cold rain that slicked the streets of Briar Glen. I drove to my parents' house with a knot of dread in my stomach. I had dressed carefully. A soft sweater that hid the bandages, dark jeans, and just enough makeup to cover the circles under my eyes. I wanted to look put together, but fragile. When I walked in, the warmth of the house hit me, smelling of rosemary and roasted meat. It was the scent of my childhood. Weaponized. Audrey, Mom cried, rushing to hug me. She was careful not to touch my right side. You look thin. Are you eating? I am fine. Mom. Marin was in the living room, sitting on the sofa next to her boyfriend, whose name I remembered was Tanner. He looked uncomfortable, nursing a beer. Marin jumped up when she saw me. Audrey, she breathed. She came over and did a strange thing. She took my left hand in both of hers and squeezed it, looking deep into my eyes with a mournful expression. I am so glad you came, she whispered. I have missed you. It was a performance. I could feel the artifice radiating off her like heat. I am here. Marin, I said simply, and then I saw him. Standing by the fireplace, chatting with Rick, was a man in a navy blue suit that looked expensive but fit him slightly wrong across the shoulders. He was handsome in a generic, television actor way, with silver-flecked hair and teeth that were too white. And this must be Audrey, he said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I am Marcus Sterling, Brightwell Asset Partners. He extended a hand. I shook it with my left. Nice to meet you, I said. He held my hand a fraction of a second too long. Your mother speaks very highly of you. The accountant, right? The brains of the operation. I pulled my hand back. I just do taxes, mostly. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china. Rick poured wine. Marin sat across from me, Tanner next to her. Mr. Sterling sat at the head of the table, opposite Rick, which was strange. Usually, that was Mom's seat. The conversation started with innocuous small talk. The weather, the football season, Rick's new lawnmower. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. I was waiting for the pivot. It came during the main course. So, Audrey, Mr. Sterling said, cutting his roast beef with surgical precision. Marin tells me you have had a bit of a rough patch lately. The injury, the trouble at work. I looked at Marin. She was staring at her plate. It has been a challenging week. I said, it makes you think, doesn't it? He said, about preparedness. I see it all the time with my clients. One accident, one medical emergency, and suddenly everything you worked for is at risk if you're not properly structured. Structured? I asked. Legal structures, he said. Trusts, power of attorney. making sure that if you are incapacitated, even temporarily, there is someone who can step in and keep the ship afloat. I see, I said. Do you own your home in Briar Glen? He asked. Yes. Outright? Or is there a mortgage? I have a mortgage. I lied. I had paid it off last year, a fact I was very proud of. But debt made me look less appealing as a target. Ah, he said. And do you have a beneficiary designated for the equity? In case something happens? I took a sip of water. Why do you ask? Just professional curiosity, he smiled. I hate to see young people exposed. Your mother was telling me you handle some of the family's legacy assets as well. What was it? The Holleridge Trust? My blood ran cold. There it was. That is a very small trust. Mr. Sterling, I said, hardly worth discussing. Small things become big problems if they are mismanaged, he said smoothly, especially if the trustee is overwhelmed or dealing with health issues. He gestured vaguely at my bandaged arm. I have actually been advising Marin on setting up a family-limited partnership, he continued, a way to consolidate everything. Your parents' assets, Marin's, yours. It simplifies management. It protects the family from external liabilities. I looked at Mom. She was nodding eagerly. It sounds like a great idea. Audrey, Mom said, Mr. Sterling says it could save us thousands in taxes, and it would mean you do not have to worry about all that paperwork anymore. Marin could handle the day-to-day. Marin? I looked at my sister. She was finally looking at me, her eyes defiant. I have been learning a lot. Audrey, she said, Mr. Sterling has been teaching me. I am not useless, you know. I didn't say you were useless, I said softly. But you think it, she snapped. You think you are the only one who can handle money. But look at you. You are on leave from work. You are injured. Maybe it is time you let someone help you. The trap was closing. They wanted me to sign over my assets and the Holleridge Trust into this partnership that Marin and Sterling would control. It was clumsy, yes, but it was aggressive. They were banking on me being intimidated by the expert and guilt-tripped by Mom. Mr. Sterling leaned forward. I have some paperwork with me. Actually, he said, just preliminary stuff. Authorization to review the accounts so we can build a proposal. No commitment, just access to see the full picture. He reached for a briefcase that was sitting on the floor next to him. I felt a sudden, sharp clarity. This man was not a financial advisor. No legitimate advisor brought paperwork to a dinner party and asked for account access before dessert. I looked at his hands. No wedding ring, but a tan line where one used to be. His watch was a Rolex, but the second hand was ticking. Not sweeping. It was a fake. I smiled. It was a weak, tired smile. I appreciate the offer. Mr. Sterling, I said, but I am really not up to looking at paperwork tonight. The pain medication makes me a little fuzzy. Marin let out a frustrated huff. Just sign the access form. Audrey, it is not a big deal. I can't, I said. My attorney advised me not to sign anything while I am on narcotics. The word attorney dropped onto the table like a stone. Sterling froze. You have an attorney? Just for the accident, I said quickly, widening my eyes innocently. For the insurance claim, but he was very strict. No signatures. Sterling relaxed, but his eyes stayed hard. Smart man. Well, perhaps next week, when the fog clears. Perhaps, I said. The rest of the dinner was excruciating. Marin was sullen. Mom was anxious, shooting glancing looks between me and Sterling. Sterling kept trying to pivot back to finances, asking about my bank, my 401k provider. But I played the role of the exhausted invalid perfectly. I don't remember. I would say, or I would have to check my files. By the time I left, my arm was throbbing with a vengeance. The itching had started. That deep, maddening itch that meant the nerves were waking up. It felt like ants were crawling under my skin. Rick walked me to the car. He seems like a sharp guy, Rick said, nodding toward the house. Sterling? He seems interesting, I said. He promises big returns. Audrey, you should listen to him. I got into my car and locked the doors. As I drove away, I watched the rearview mirror. No one came out. When I got home, I stripped off the sweater, wincing as the fabric dragged over the bulky bandage. I took a Benadryl for the itching. I sat on my sofa in the dark, the green light of the camera blinking at me. I pulled up the app. I wanted to see what had happened while I was gone. The feed showed the empty living room for hours, shadows lengthening. But then, I scrolled back to Tuesday, the day of the bagel visit. I had watched the video of Marin trying to break into the lockbox a dozen times, but I had watched it on my phone, with the volume low. I put my headphones on. I turned the volume up to maximum. I watched Marin pick up the lockbox. I heard the clink-clink of the bobby pin. Then, she pulled out her phone to text. I heard her mutter, "Damn it." But then, she did something I hadn't noticed before. She tapped the screen, putting the phone on speaker, and set it on the coffee table while she tried the lock again. A voice came from the phone. It was tinny and distorted, but audible. "Did you get it?" a male voice asked. "No, it is stuck," Marin whispered. "Leave it," the voice said. "Just get the account number from the statement on the desk." "I already got that," Marin said. "But Sterling, she is going to notice if money moves." Sterling, she was on the phone with him. He wasn't just an advisor she met recently. He was directing her, and then, the voice, Sterling, said the line that turned my blood to ice. "If she won't sign, we need a different approach. We might need to up the pressure." The burn wasn't enough. "I feel bad about the burn," Marin whispered. "It looks really bad." "Focus. Marin," Sterling snapped. "Do you want the money or not? You owe 40 grand. This is the only way out. Make her look crazy. Make her look incompetent. Then we take conservatorship." The video ended. I sat in the dark, the silence of the house pressing in on me. $40,000. That was Marin's debt. That was the price of my safety. And the burn wasn't enough. It confirmed everything. The accident was a calculated first strike, a physical assault designed to weaken me, to make me vulnerable, to force me into a position where I needed help. And the endgame was conservatorship. They wanted legal control over me, like I was an elderly parent with dementia. If they got that, they could liquidate everything I owned, drain the Holleridge Trust, and leave me with nothing. I took the headphones off. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. I felt a cold, hard knot of determination tighten in my chest. They wanted to play the long game? They wanted to use legal structures and fake concern? Okay. I looked at the camera. I had the recording. I had the proof of conspiracy. I had the admission of assault. I could go to the police now. But Elias Thorne's voice came back to me. Avoid direct confrontation until you know the full objective. I knew the objective now. But if I went to the police, it would be messy. It would be my word against theirs. A recording that might be inadmissible without consent laws. A family war that would drag on for years. And Sterling. A man like that, a grifter, he would disappear the moment the heat turned up. He would vanish, leaving Marin to take the fall. I didn't just want safety. I wanted justice, and I wanted to know who Sterling really was. I opened my laptop. I ignored the pain in my arm. I typed Brightwell Asset Partners into the search bar again. I dug deeper this time. I checked the state business registry. No record found. I checked the FINRA broker check database. Marcus Sterling. No record found. He was a ghost. I smiled grimly. Ghosts were hard to catch, but they always left footprints. I opened a new email. I addressed it to Elias Thorne. Subject: New evidence. Conspiracy to commit conservatorship fraud. Mr. Thorne, I have an audio recording of my sister and her associate discussing the intentional nature of my injury and their plan to force me into a conservatorship to cover a $40,000 debt. The associate is posing as a financial advisor named Marcus Sterling. I am not going to confront them yet. I am going to set a trap. I need you to draft a document for me, a fake trust amendment, something that looks like exactly what they want. I am going to give them the keys to the kingdom, and I'm going to let them walk right into the cell. I hit send. Then I went to the kitchen. I looked at the spot on the floor where the soup had spilled. The wood was slightly discolored there, a pale ghost of the stain. You want to up the pressure. Marin, I whispered, let's see who breaks first. I went to the cupboard and pulled out a fresh box of tea. I made a cup, moving slowly, deliberately. I was done being the victim. The burning was over. Now came the freeze. The art of forgery, I discovered, was not so different from the art of accounting. Both required a meticulous attention to detail, a respect for structure, and a thorough understanding of what people expected to see. If you gave someone a column of numbers that added up perfectly, they rarely questioned where the numbers came from. I sat at my kitchen table on Sunday morning, my laptop open, a stack of heavy bond paper next to me. My right arm was still useless, strapped to my chest in a sling, so I worked slowly with my left hand. It was tedious, but the rhythmic clicking of the keys was soothing. It was the sound of a cage being built. I was creating a dossier, a fake dossier. I started with a logo. I found a high-resolution image of the Holleridge Community Trust seal, the green pine tree, and pasted it into a document header. I matched the font they used for their official correspondence. Times New Roman, 12-point, boring, official. Then, I began to type. Account summary, Q3 2025. Asset class, equities and fixed income. Total managed assets. I paused. The real trust held about $85,000. It was a respectable amount, enough to buy books for the county library for a decade, but it was not life-changing money. It was certainly not enough to justify a complex fraud scheme involving a fake financial advisor. So, I made it worth their while. Total managed assets, $412,650. I fabricated a list of holdings, tech stocks bought in the early 2000s, a municipal bond fund that had supposedly matured. I created a phantom dividend history that showed quarterly payouts being funneled into a separate, high-yield holding account. I printed it out. The paper was warm in my hand. Then I created a second document, a letter, addressed to myself, from a fictitious senior trust officer. Dear Mr. Lewis, per your instruction, we have finalized the consolidation of the undisclosed assets. The liquidity event is scheduled for November 1st. As discussed, these funds remain outside the primary reporting structure to ensure privacy from familial beneficiaries. It was the smoking gun. It painted a picture of me not just as a trustee, but as an embezzler. It suggested I was hiding nearly $500,000 from my family, planning to cash out and run. If Marin found this, she would lose her mind. I took a manila folder and labeled it Trust Documents, Confidential in red marker. I roughed up the edges of the papers to make them look handled. I slid the fabricated summary and the damning letter inside. Now, I had to plant it. It couldn't be too obvious. If I left it on the kitchen counter, she would know it was a setup. It had to be somewhere she would look if she were snooping, but somewhere I might plausibly hide something precious. I went to the guest room. I opened the closet. I bypassed the filing cabinet. She had already raided that. Instead, I went to the bottom shelf, where I kept a plastic bin of old tax returns and winter sweaters. I tucked the folder inside the bin, buried beneath a wool scarf, but with the red confidential tab just barely visible if you lifted the lid. It was perfect. It was bait. Now, I just had to wait for the rat. The week dragged on, heavy with silence and paranoia. The pain in my arm was shifting from a sharp burn to a deep, itching ache that kept me awake until 3 a.m. I spent the nights watching the green LED of the camera, waiting for movement that never came. On Tuesday, the professional hammer dropped. My phone rang. It was Linda from HR. Her voice was no longer professional. It was cold. Audrey. We have had another incident. I closed my eyes. What now? Linda? A client called this morning. She said, Mr. Henderson. He claims you called him yesterday evening to discuss his portfolio tax liabilities. He said you were erratic. He said you read out specific account balances and asked him if he wanted to move funds to a private ledger. I gripped the phone. Mr. Henderson? I have not spoken to Mr. Henderson in 6 months. I am on administrative leave. Linda, I do not even have access to his file. He was very specific. Audrey, he said the caller ID matched your work cell. Spoofing. I said, someone is spoofing my number. Linda, you have to see what is happening here. Someone is trying to destroy my reputation. We have to take client complaints seriously. She cut in. Mr. Henderson is threatening to pull his account. We are expanding the scope of the investigation. You are to have no contact with any clients. If you violate this, we will move to immediate termination. She hung up. I sat there, shaking. Mr. Henderson was one of our biggest clients. If he left, the firm lost thousands in revenue. This was sterling. It had to be. He was using tech I didn't understand to mimic my number, making calls to burn the ground beneath my feet. They wanted me fired. They wanted me desperate. If I had no job, the $40,000 Marin owed and the $400,000 she thought I had would look even more tempting. Later that afternoon, my cell rang again. I almost ignored it, but the caller ID said, Sarah. Hey. I answered, my voice dull. Audrey, listen. I cannot stay on long. Sarah whispered. She sounded like she was in a bathroom stall. The echo was tinny. What is it? Something weird happened today. You know the temp? The new guy in archiving? Yeah? He came up to my desk an hour ago. He asked if I could approve a file request. He said Audrey Lewis called him from an external line and asked him to pull the hard copies of the client master list from 2020. My stomach dropped. The master list. That had names, addresses, social security numbers. Did he give it to her? I asked. No, Sarah said. He got spooked because the caller sounded off, like a recording, or like someone trying to sound like you but getting the cadence wrong. He told her he needed a manager's approval, and she hung up. Thank God. Audrey, who is doing this? Sarah asked. Everyone is talking. People are saying you are having a breakdown. I am not having a breakdown. Sarah, I said firmly, I am being framed. Please, just keep your head down. Do not get involved. I do not want them coming after you too. I hung up. The impersonation was expanding. They weren't just reacting anymore. They were hunting. They were trying to get data they could sell or use to steal more identities. I needed to speed up the timeline. I called Marin. I let it ring 4 times before she picked up. Hello? Her voice was guarded. Hey, I said. I sounded tired, beaten. I wanted to apologize. For the other night. When I snapped at you about the soup, there was a pause. Then, the tone shifted. The warmth returned, sugary and false. Oh, Audrey, thank you. I have been so worried about you. I know you are in pain. I know you are not yourself. I am just overwhelmed. I said, the HR stuff. It is getting worse. I feel like I am losing my grip on everything. I am so sorry, she cooed. You know I am here to help, right? I can come over. I can help you get organized. Mom says you are drowning in paperwork. Yeah, I said. Maybe you could come by tomorrow? I have a doctor's appointment in the morning. But maybe after? Around 2? I will be there, she said. I will bring coffee. I hung up. The trap was set. Wednesday morning. I went to the wound care center. The clinician, a different woman this time named Dr. Patel, examined my arm. The blisters had popped, leaving raw, red craters that were slowly scabbing over. It is healing, she said, but the scarring will be significant. Dr. Patel, I said, can you do me a favor? Can you update the chart notes? What do you need? I need you to describe the burn pattern in detail, specifically the gravity flow. She looked at me, her brow furrowing. The nurse at urgent care noted it looked like a pore. I said, I just need to make sure that is in the permanent record, for insurance purposes. Doctor. Patel looked at the arm again. She traced the splatter marks on my shoulder. It is consistent with a liquid being released from a height directly above the subject, she said slowly. Not a splash from impact. Please write that down. I said. She typed it into the computer. Patient requested documentation of burn trajectory. Clinical observation confirms pattern consistent with poured liquid from superior angle. It was a dry clinical sentence, but in a courtroom, It would be a scream. After the doctor, I drove to Elias Thorne's office. I sat in the squeaky chair again. Elias read the draft I had sent him. "You are playing a dangerous game. Audrey," he said, "I have no choice." I said, "They are trying to get me fired. They are trying to steal my house. I need them to make a move that is undeniable." He nodded. "I have drafted the letter to the Holleridge Trust. It formally notifies them of the attempted breach and places a freeze on all beneficiary changes. We will send it certified mail today, but for the meeting—" He looked at me over his glasses. "If you are going to record them, you need to be careful. In this state, we are a one-party consent jurisdiction, which means as long as you are part of the conversation, you can record it. But if you leave the room and the recording continues, that is a felony. I will stay in the room." I said, "And I want to be there." He said, "Not in the room, in the lobby, or in the car. If things go south, I want to be close." Okay. Thursday came. Maren arrived at 2:00 sharp. She looked polished. She was wearing a blazer and jeans, looking like the capable younger sister coming to save the day. "Hey," she said, breezing in, "you look tired." "Odds, I am," I said, playing up the grogginess. "I took a pain pill an hour ago. I feel a little floaty. Go sit down," she commanded. "I will make us some tea, and then we can tackle that pile of mail." I sat on the sofa. I let my eyes droop. Maren bustled around the kitchen. She brought me tea. She sat next to me and started opening envelopes. "Look, this is just a bill," she said, "and this is junk. See? It is not so bad." She was being helpful. She was being kind. It was terrifying. After an hour, I yawned. "Maren, I am sorry." I said, "I think I need to lay down for a bit." "The medicine." "Go," she said. "Go nap. I will just finish tidying up the living room and then I will head out." "You are the best," I mumbled. I went into my bedroom and closed the door. I waited 5 seconds, then opened it a crack. I couldn't see the living room from there, but I had my phone. I pulled up the camera feed. Maren waited until my door clicked shut. Then she stood up. She didn't tidy the living room. She moved with silent, predatory speed. She went straight to the guest room. I switched the camera feed to the second camera, the one I had installed yesterday, hidden inside a hollowed-out speaker on the desk. I watched her enter the guest room. She scanned the room. She checked the filing cabinet, but it was locked. She checked the desk drawers. Then she opened the closet. She dug through the coats. She kicked the plastic bin. She crouched down and popped the lid. She moved the scarf. She froze. I saw her hand reach in and pull out the manila folder. "Trust documents. Confidential." She opened it. I watched her face. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open. She flipped through the fake account summary. She read the letter. She pulled out her phone and snapped picture after picture of the documents. Then, she did exactly what I hoped she would do. She took the folder. She stuffed it into her oversized purse. She stood up, checked the hallway, and walked out of the guest room. On the living room camera, I watched her grab her keys. She didn't even say goodbye. She just slipped out the front door and was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart pounding. She had taken it. She had stolen the bait. Now, she thought she had the leverage. She thought she had found the secret fortune I was hoarding. In her mind, the $40,000 she owed was nothing compared to the $400,000 I was hiding. The text came 2 hours later. "I found what you have been hiding. We need to talk, like adults." I didn't reply immediately. I let her stew. Then my phone rang. It was Mom. I answered. "Hello? How could you?" Mom screamed. Her voice was raw, hysterical. "Mom, do not play innocent with me. Audrey!" she yelled. "Maren showed me. She showed me the papers." "What papers?" I asked, keeping my voice confused. "The trust. The money. $400,000. Audrey, your father left that for the family, and you have been hiding it? You have been planning to run away with it? Mom, listen to me. No, you listen. Maren told me everything. She told me how you have been lying about being broke. She told me how you treat her like dirt while you sit on a pile of cash that Daddy meant for all of us. You are stealing from your own mother. The accusation hit me harder than the soup. My mother, who I had cooked for, who I had remembered on every birthday, who I had supported emotionally for years. She believed I was a thief based on one lie from Marin. Mom, Marin stole those papers from my house. I said, she saved them. Mom shrieked. She saved them before you could embezzle it all. I cannot believe I raised such a selfish, cold-hearted daughter. I felt tears prick my eyes. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But I pushed the pain down. I turned it into fuel. I want to see these papers. Mom, I said calmly, if Marin has proof, I want to see it. We are going to meet. Mom said, tomorrow, at Mr. Sterling's office. He is going to mediate this, and you are going to sign over control of that trust to me and Marin before I call the police. Mr. Sterling's office. Perfect. Send me the address. I said, Brightwell Asset Partners was located in a sleek glass building downtown. Or rather, they rented a conference room in a co-working space in a sleek glass building downtown. I looked it up. Regus Co-working Suites. Friday morning. I dressed for battle. I wore a black blazer over my sling. I looked severe. I looked done. I met Elias Thorne in the parking lot. Remember, he said, handing me a small digital recorder. Put this in your pocket. It is a backup to your phone. Do not let them intimidate you. They are operating on false information. You hold all the cards. I took the recorder. I feel like I'm walking into a lion's den. No, Elias said, smiling grimly. You are walking into a petting zoo. They just think they are lions. I walked into the lobby. The receptionist directed me to conference room B. I opened the door. They were all there. Marin, sitting with her arms crossed, looking vindicated. Mom, red-eyed and shaking, clutching a tissue. Sterling, sitting at the head of the table like a judge. And Tanner, Marin's boyfriend, lurking in the corner like muscle. Audrey, Sterling said, standing up. Thank you for coming. I didn't shake his hand. I sat down at the opposite end of the table. Let us get this over with. I said. Marin slammed the manila folder onto the table. You are caught. Audrey. She sneered. Just admit it. Sterling cleared his throat. Audrey, your family is very distressed. These documents, they indicate a serious breach of fiduciary duty. You have been concealing significant assets. He opened the folder and spread my fake documents out on the table. $412,000. Sterling read, hidden in a private ledger. Mom let out a sob. Your father worked so hard for that money. And you were just going to take it? I looked at the papers. I looked at the fake logo. I looked at the numbers I had invented on a Sunday morning. I looked at Marin. You went through my house. I said, I was looking for a pen. Marin shouted, and I found this in the closet. You hid it. You went into my guest room closet, dug to the bottom of a sealed bin, and opened a folder marked confidential. I corrected, that is burglary. Marin, it is not burglary if it is family, Mom yelled, and thank God she did, or we would never have known. Sterling held up a hand. Ladies, please, the method of discovery is irrelevant right now. The issue is the assets. Audrey, to avoid legal action and criminal charges for embezzlement, we have prepared a solution. He slid a document across the table. Resignation of trustee and transfer of power of attorney. If you sign this, Sterling said, Marin and your mother become co-trustees. You resign. We will handle the distribution of the assets, and your family agrees not to press charges. I looked at the document. It was garbage, legally flimsy, but dangerous if signed. And then what? I asked. You take the $400,000? We manage it, Sterling said. For the family. I looked at Tanner. He was watching me with greedy eyes. He was probably already spending his share on a new truck. I looked at Mom. She looked at me with pure disgust. You have broken my heart. Audrey, she whispered, that hurt. It really did. But I looked at the burn on my arm. I remembered the nurse saying it looks like a pore. I remembered Marin whispering the burn wasn't enough. I reached into my pocket and touched the recorder to make sure it was running. I picked up the fake account summary. "This is what you found?" I asked Marin. "Yes," she snapped. "And you are sure this is mine? You are sure this is the Holleridge Trust? It says it right there." She pointed to the header. I looked at Sterling. "And you, Mr. Sterling, you are a financial expert. You have reviewed this?" "I have," he said gravely. "It is a standard high-yield ledger." "And you verified these holdings?" I asked. "Of course," he lied. I nodded. I leaned back in my chair. The room was silent. They were waiting for me to break. They were waiting for me to cry and sign. I looked Marin dead in the eye. "Marin, I have one question for you." She rolled her eyes. "What? Where did you get these papers from? My locked home?" "I told you," she said. "The guest room closet." "So you admit, on the record, that you entered my home without permission, searched a concealed location, and removed these documents?" I admitted nothing. "I have a key. Mom gave me a key." Mom nodded. "I told her she could go check on you." "Okay," I said. "So you used a key to enter my home and remove property. Property that proves you are a thief," Marin yelled. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "There is just one problem." "Marin, what?" I tossed the paper back onto the table. "That money does not exist." The room went dead silent. "What?" Sterling asked. "I fabricated that document on Sunday." I said, "I sat at my kitchen table and typed it up. I made up the numbers. I made up the account. I made up the dividends." "No," Marin said, her voice shaking. "That is a lie. You are lying. Call the bank." I said, "Look at the routing number on that summary. Do you know what bank that belongs to?" I pointed to the string of numbers at the bottom of the page. "It is the routing number for a fictional bank in a Monopoly game." I said, "I changed the last digit. It doesn't exist." Sterling grabbed the paper. He stared at it. His face went pale. "Why would you do that?" Mom whispered. "Why would you make up fake papers?" "To see if you were stealing from me," I said. "To see if Marin was searching my house. To see if she would bring it to you. And to see if this man," I pointed at Sterling, "would lie and say he verified it." I stood up. "The real Holleridge Trust has $85,000 in it. Mom, that is it. And it is locked down. But these people? They just tried to get me to sign over control of a fortune that is nothing but paper and ink." "You are lying," Marin shrieked, standing up. "You are trying to trick us." "I am?" I asked. I pulled out my phone. "I have a camera in my guest room. Marin, I have a video of you stealing that folder. I have a video of you texting Sterling right afterward." I turned to Sterling. "And I have a recording of you, Mr. Sterling, from last Friday. When Marin called you from my living room, I heard you tell her that the burn wasn't enough. I heard you tell her to up the pressure." Sterling stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "This meeting is over," he said. "Sit down." I barked. The command was so loud, so authoritative, that he actually froze. "I am not the one who is in trouble here," I said. "You are attempting to extort me based on forged documents that I created to catch you. You are soliciting a signature under duress. And you—" "Marin." I looked at my sister. She looked small now, terrified. "You burned me. You actually burned me. For money. I didn't mean to," she wailed. "It was an accident. It was a pour." I said, "The doctor confirmed it. The police will confirm it." I looked at Mom. She was staring at Marin, her mouth open. The realization was slowly, painfully dawning on her. The money wasn't real. The evil Audrey wasn't real. But the burn was. "I am leaving now," I said. "I am going to walk out that door. And if any of you tries to stop me, my attorney, who is sitting in the lobby, will come in here with the police." I turned to go. "Audrey, wait," Mom said, reaching out. "Do not touch me," I said. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob. "One more thing," I said, turning back to Sterling. "Brightwell Asset Partners isn't registered in this state. I checked. So unless you want the SEC looking into your little operation here, I suggest you lose my sister's number." I opened the door and walked out. I made it to the lobby before my legs started to shake. Elias Thorne stood up, closing his magazine. "How did it go?" he asked. "I got them," I whispered. I expected to feel triumphant. I expected to feel vindicated. But as I walked out into the cold air of the parking lot, all I felt was a terrible, hollow grief. I had won, but I had lost my family to do it. And I knew, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that Marin wouldn't let it end here. Rats didn't just leave when the trap snapped. They bit. I had barely made it 3 steps into the hallway when the door behind me flew open. "Audrey!" Mom screamed. Her voice echoed off the sterile glass walls of the co-working space, shrill and desperate. "You get back here! You do not walk away from your family!" I stopped. I looked at Elias Thorne, who was sitting on a plush orange bench in the waiting area, calmly folding his newspaper. He looked at me, then at my mother, then back at me. He stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. "Is the party over?" he asked quietly. "It is just starting," I said. My mother grabbed my good arm. Her fingers were digging in, clutching me like she was trying to keep me from falling off a cliff, or perhaps trying to drag me over one. "You are not leaving until you explain yourself," she hissed. "Making up fake documents? Trapping your sister? What is wrong with you?" Marin appeared in the doorway, her face blotchy and red. "She is crazy." "Mom!" Marin shouted. "I told you, she gave me those papers. She handed them to me last week when I was helping her clean. She said, 'Here, take this. I don't want the responsibility anymore.' She is lying about the theft." I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was the same feeling I got when a spreadsheet finally balanced, when the chaos of raw data resolved into a single, undeniable truth. I looked at Elias. "Counselor," I said, "would you like to join us?" Elias nodded. I believe I would. We walked back into the conference room. Marin retreated to her seat, looking like a cornered animal. Sterling was standing by the window, on his phone. But he hung up abruptly when he saw Elias. "Who is this?" Sterling demanded. "This is my attorney." I said. Elias placed his briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. He didn't sit down. He stood behind a chair, his hands resting on the back of it, looking at the room with the weary patience of a man who had seen every variety of human greed. "Now," Elias said, "let us address the accusation that Ms. Lewis provided these documents willingly." "She did!" Marin cried, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She was high on painkillers. She gave me the folder." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had already queued up the clip. I did not want to do this. I said, "But you leave me no choice." I set the phone in the center of the table and turned the volume up to maximum. The video played. The timestamps were clearly visible in the corner. October 23rd, 2:14 p.m., on the small screen. The room watched Marin enter my guest bedroom. They watched her rifle through the coats. They watched her kick the plastic bin, pry off the lid, and dig under the wool scarf. They watched her pull out the folder marked confidential, check the contents, and then shove it into her purse before looking over her shoulder with the guilt of a thief. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking the air out of everyone's lungs. Marin's face went white. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. I stopped the video. "That does not look like me handing you a folder." "Marin," I said, "that looks like you breaking into a sealed container in a room you had no business being in." Mom stared at the phone. She blinked. Once, twice. I waited for the apology. I waited for the realization that her youngest daughter, her baby, had lied to her face. Instead, Mom looked up at me, her eyes narrowing. "You have cameras in your house?" she asked. "What?" I said, taken aback. "You are spying on your family?" she repeated, her voice rising in disbelief. "Marin went over there to help you, to take care of you, and you were recording her? Like she is a criminal?" I stared at her. The absurdity of it hit me like a physical blow. She saw the crime, and she blamed the witness. "She is a criminal." "Mom," I said, "you just watched her commit larceny. She was looking for a pen." Mom shouted, desperate to rewrite the reality in front of her. She probably just found it and got confused. I looked at the table. I lined up the facts, imagining them as dominoes. Let us be very clear about the timeline, I said, my voice steady. On October 18th, Marin pours boiling soup on me. While I'm at the hospital, she searches my filing cabinet. I found the bent tabs. 2 days later, someone tries to change the address on the Hollow Ridge Trust. 2 days after that, someone sends a fake complaint to my HR department with details only Marin knew. And yesterday, Marin steals a decoy folder from my closet. I looked at Marin. This is not confusion. Mom? This is a campaign. Elias cleared his throat. He turned his gaze to the man at the head of the table. And that brings us to you, sir, Elias said. Sterling straightened his tie. I am just a mediator here. I am trying to help the family resolve a dispute. Elias reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I took the liberty of running a check on Brightwell Asset Partners this morning. Elias said, It is a very impressive name. Sounds established, trustworthy. He slid the paper across the table. However, the Secretary of State has no record of such an entity. Neither does the SEC. Neither does FINRA. In fact, the only record I could find of a Marcus Sterling is a disciplinary hearing from the State Real Estate Board 4 years ago, regarding the mishandling of escrow funds. Sterling's face went rigid. That was a misunderstanding. Is it? Elias asked. Because impersonating a financial advisor to facilitate the transfer of trust assets is a felony. Mr. Sterling, and attempting to coerce a signature on a power of attorney document under false pretenses? That is fraud. I am not impersonating anyone. Sterling snapped. I am a consultant. You are a grifter, Elias said pleasantly. And not a very good one. Then Elias turned to Tanner. Marin's boyfriend had been trying to make himself invisible in the corner, staring at his boots. And you must be Tanner, Elias said. Tanner flinched. I didn't do anything. I'm just here for support. Support, Elias repeated. That is an interesting word. We ran a background check on you too. Son, it is amazing what you can find in public records. Elias pulled out another sheet. 3 small claims judgments in the last 2 years. One for a failed landscaping business where you took deposits and never cut the grass. One for a car flipping scheme. And one for, let me see, unpaid rent at your last 3 apartments. Marin made a small, wounded sound. Elias looked at Marin. Your boyfriend owes nearly $30,000 in judgments, Ms. Lewis, and according to your bank records, which we can subpoena if this goes to court, you have been making payments to his creditors for the last 6 months. I looked at Marin. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. It wasn't just her debt. It was his. She was drowning, trying to keep this man who was using her, and she had decided that I was the life raft. You burned me for him? I whispered. Marin began to cry. Not the pretty, manipulative tears she usually cried, but ugly, heaving sobs. He said he was going to go to jail. Marin wailed. He said they were going to arrest him if he didn't pay. I didn't know what to do. So you decided to steal from your sister? Mom asked, her voice trembling. I needed the money. Mom! Marin screamed. And Audrey has so much. She has the house. She has the job. She has the trust. She doesn't even use it. She just sits on it. There it was, the entitlement. The justification. Elias stepped forward. Here is the reality. He said, we have evidence of assault. We have evidence of burglary. We have evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. If my client walks out of here and goes to the police station, Marin, you are looking at 5 to 7 years, and you, Mr. Sterling, you are looking at federal charges for wire fraud. The room was silent except for Marin's sobbing. Sterling looked at the door, calculating his odds of running. But Elias continued, my client is generous. I stepped forward. I placed my good hand on the table. I am not pressing charges today. I said. Mom let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 10 minutes. Oh, thank God. Audrey, thank you. I am not done, I said, cutting her off. I looked at Marin. I am not pressing charges on one condition. You are going to fix what you broke at my job. Marin sniffled. What? The HR complaint? I said, the anonymous tip, the client call. I know it was you. I didn't. Marin started to deny it, but I held up my hand. Do not lie to me. Marin, we traced the number. The call came from a prepaid burner phone, but you topped up the minutes using your email address to get the loyalty points. Marin's eyes went wide. It was such a stupid, petty mistake. She had risked a felony, but she couldn't resist saving $5 on airtime. I literally have the receipt, I said. I pulled a document from my bag. It was a notarized affidavit. You are going to sign this, I said. It states that you filed false complaints against me at Northlake Ledger Works out of a personal domestic dispute. You are going to admit that you impersonated a client. You are going to sign it, and Elias is going to witness it. And if I don't? Marin whispered. Then I drive to the precinct, I said, and I show them the video of the soup, and the video of the theft, and the texts. Marin looked at Tanner. He wouldn't meet her eyes. He was already distancing himself, figuring out how to leave her behind. She looked at Mom. Mom was crying into her hands, defeated. Give me the pen, Marin whispered. She signed the paper. Her hand was shaking so badly the signature was barely legible, but it was there. Now get out, I said to Sterling and Tanner. Sterling didn't hesitate. He grabbed his briefcase and bolted. Tanner followed him, not even pausing to check on Marin. The door clicked shut, leaving the three of us in the silence of the conference room. The family. I took the affidavit and handed it to Elias. He checked it and put it in his folder. Audrey, Mom said, her voice weak. Can't we fix this? She is your sister. She made a mistake. She was desperate. I looked at my mother. I saw the lines of worry on her face, the way her hands twisted in her lap. I loved her. God help me. I loved her. But I realized in that moment that she would never protect me. If Marin set me on fire again, Mom would ask why I was standing so close to the matches. She didn't make a mistake. Mom, I said, she made a plan. I looked at Marin. She was wiping her eyes, her face sullen now that the fear had receded. You are not to contact me, I said. No calls, no texts, no showing up at my house. If you do, I file the police report. You are kicking me out of the family? Marin asked. I am removing myself from the line of fire. I said. I turned to go. Elias held the door for me. As I walked out, I expected to feel lighter. I expected the vindication to taste sweet, like champagne. Instead, it tasted like ash. I had the paper that would save my job. I had the leverage to keep them away. But I was walking out of that room an orphan in everything but name. I reached the lobby. Elias put a hand on my shoulder. You did good. Audrey, he said, that was not easy. Is it over? I asked. Legally? For now, he said, but watch your back. People like that. They do not learn lessons. They just hold grudges. I walked to the elevators. I needed to get to my car. I needed to sit in the quiet and let the adrenaline crash. I took the elevator down to the parking garage. The concrete structure was cold and dim. My footsteps echoed as I walked toward my sedan. I saw Sterling's car pulling out of the exit lane, tires screeching slightly. He was in a hurry. I reached my car. I unlocked it with the remote. Then I froze. There was something under my windshield wiper. It wasn't a flyer. It was a white envelope. Plain. No writing on the outside. I looked around the garage. It was empty. I reached out and pulled the envelope from the wiper. My hand was trembling. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy. A bank statement. Holleridge Community Trust. October 2024. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't the fake document I had created. This wasn't the forgery Marin had stolen. This was the real statement, the one I had filed 3 weeks ago, the one that was currently locked in my safe deposit box at the bank, a box Marin had no access to, a box Mom had no access to. I stared at the numbers. Ending balance, $85,420, and written in the margin, in a handwriting I didn't recognize, spiky, aggressive, blue ink, was a note. "You think this ends clean?" I spun around, scanning the shadows of the parking garage. Who? Marin didn't have this. Sterling didn't have this. Even if they had hacked my computer, this document wasn't on my computer. I kept the trust documents in hard copy only, specifically to avoid digital theft. The only digital copy was on the bank's secure server, unless... I remembered Marin looking at her phone in the conference room, checking it, like she was waiting for a signal. I remembered the voice on the recording. "We need to up the pressure." I had assumed the "we" was just Marin and Sterling. But Sterling was a small-time grifter. He didn't have the sophistication to hack a bank. And Marin couldn't even manage a burner phone without leaving a trail. Someone else was involved. Someone who had access to the real documents. Someone who was watching me right now. I got into my car and locked the doors. I sat there, clutching the steering wheel, the real statement burning a hole in the passenger seat. I had closed the trap on Marin. I had exposed Sterling, but I hadn't caught the person holding the flashlight. I started the engine. The sound was loud in the enclosed space. I wasn't done. I pulled out of the garage, checking my rearview mirror every 3 seconds. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the street. I needed to make a stop before I went home. I drove to the bank, not my regular branch, but the main office downtown. I walked in just as they were closing. I asked to see the access logs for my safe deposit box. The manager, a woman I knew vaguely, looked concerned at my sling and my pale face. "Audrey, are you okay? I just need to see the log." "Janet, please." She pulled the book. She flipped to the page. October 20th. That was 5 days ago. There was a signature. It was a scrawl, barely legible, but it wasn't mine. "Who is this?" I asked, pointing to the line. Janet squinted. "Well, that looks like..." "She checked your ID." "Audrey. Or, the woman who came in did. She had your driver's license. And your key." "My key." I felt the blood drain from my face. My spare key to the safe deposit box was in the lockbox at home. The lockbox Marin had tried to break into. The lockbox I had emptied. But before I emptied it, before I moved the cash and the car key, Marin had been there. She had taken photos. But photos couldn't open a safe deposit box. You needed the physical key. Had she taken it? No. I had checked. The key was there when I emptied the box. Unless she had swapped it. I ran out of the bank. I sat in my car and dug through my purse. I found the key ring I had taken from the lockbox. I looked at the safe deposit key. It looked right. It was small, brass, rectangular head. I looked closer. The serial number stamped on the head was 442. My box number was 4442. But the bank didn't stamp the box number on the key. They stamped a random security code. This was a copy, a visual duplicate. Someone had taken my key, copied it, and replaced it with a dummy. Marin didn't have the skill to cut a key, but Tanner? The guy who ran car flipping schemes? The guy who probably knew every locksmith in town? I hit the steering wheel with my good hand. They had been inside the box. They had the real documents. So why the charade with the fake document? Why did Marin steal the bait if she already had the real thing? Because they weren't talking to each other. Marin was the blunt instrument. She was the chaos agent. She was supposed to get me fired, get me crazy, get me to sign the power of attorney. But the person who went to the bank, they were gathering intelligence. They were the one who left the note on my car. "You think this ends clean?" I put the car in gear. I wasn't going home. It wasn't safe. I drove to the only place I could think of, the police station. But as I pulled up to the intersection, my phone buzzed. A text message. "Unknown number. If you go to the cops, we release the medical file, the one from your college years. You know the one." I slammed on the brakes. Horns blared behind me. My college medical file. 10 years ago, I had a brief hospitalization for exhaustion and anxiety after finals week. It was minor. It was nothing. But in the hands of someone trying to paint me as mentally unstable, someone trying to prove I needed a conservatorship, it was ammunition. And only 3 people knew about that hospitalization. Me, Mom, and Marin. I turned the car around. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. I drove back toward Briar Glen. The night was fully dark now. The streetlights blurred in my vision. I was done playing defense. I was done with decoys. They wanted to use my past against me? They wanted to threaten me with secrets? I looked at the statement on the seat. I pulled into my driveway. My house looked dark and uninviting. I walked to the front door. I noticed something immediately. The camera I had installed on the porch. The little ring light was off. I opened the door. The house was silent. Too silent. I walked into the living room. My indoor camera, the one on the bookshelf, was unplugged. The cord was dangling, and sitting on the kitchen counter, in the exact center of the island, was a pot. It wasn't the pot for my birthday. That one was still in the cabinet. This was identical, a large, stainless steel stock pot. But it wasn't empty. I walked closer, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The pot was filled with water, cold, still water, and floating in the center was a single, laminated piece of paper. I reached in and pulled it out, water dripping onto the floor. It was a photo of me, sleeping in my bed, taken from inside my bedroom. Taken. Last night, I dropped the photo. I backed away, reaching for my phone. They weren't just watching from the outside. They had a key, and they were done knocking. I did not sleep at home that night. I drove to a motel 2 towns over, the kind of place where you paid cash and no one looked you in the eye. I barricaded the door with a chair and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the photocopy of the bank statement and the wet photograph of myself sleeping. They had been in my room. They had stood over me while I was unconscious, breathing my air, holding a camera, deciding whether to hurt me then or wait. The violation felt physical, like a hand around my throat. The next morning, I stopped being a sister and started being a ghost. I took the day off work, real leave this time, not administrative limbo. I drove to the bank and closed every account I had. I opened new ones at a credit union 3 counties away. I rented a post office box in a town I rarely visited and forwarded all my mail there. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. Setting a PIN so complex, I had to write it down in a code only I understood. I hired a security consultant, a retired detective named Miller, who smelled like tobacco and saw the world as a series of unlocked doors. He met me at my house while I packed a bag. "Your locks are garbage," he told me, inspecting the front door. "I can rake this deadbolt in 10 seconds. And your windows? They are just suggestions." He found the point of entry, the sliding glass door in the kitchen. The latch had been filed down, just enough that a firm jolt would pop it open without breaking the glass. "They have been coming and going," he said grimly. "Probably for weeks." I felt a wave of nausea. Weeks. While I slept, while I watched TV, while I nursed my burn, I had him install heavy-duty strike plates, window bars, and a commercial-grade alarm system with cellular backup. I changed the Wi-Fi network, the router, and every password I had ever typed. But the real lockdown happened inside my head. I stopped answering calls from family numbers. I blocked my aunts, my cousins, anyone who might be a conduit for Marin. I became an island. The nights were the hardest. During the day, the adrenaline of logistics kept me moving. But at night, in the silence of my fortified house, the pain in my arm would wake me up. The scar tissue was tightening as it healed, a constant, pulling reminder of the betrayal. I would lie there, sweating, listening to the creak of the house, wondering if the alarm was enough. I realized I was grieving. I wasn't just grieving the relationship with Marin. I was grieving my own naivety. I missed the version of myself who believed that shared DNA meant shared loyalty. That woman was dead. Marin had boiled her alive. 3 days later, the confirmation came from the Hollow Ridge Community Trust. It was a formal letter, sent to my new P.O. box. "Dear Ms. Lewis, regarding the security inquiry," I read it in my car. "Mrs. Higgins had flagged an incident. A woman had come into the office in person the previous Friday. She had presented a driver's license with my name on it, but the photo was slightly grainy. She had tried to sign the beneficiary change forms. The signature was close," the letter said, "but the loop on the L was too wide. When the clerk asked for a secondary ID, the woman became agitated and left. It wasn't a digital hack. It was physical impersonation. Marin, or someone she hired who looked enough like me, had walked into that office wearing my name like a costume. They were getting desperate. The fake documents meeting had failed. The intimidation with the photo was a scare tactic, but the in-person attempt at the trust meant they were running out of time. They needed the money now. I knew I had to cut the head off the snake. I called my mother. "I will meet you," I said, "but not at the house, at the diner on 4th Street, in a booth by the window." Mom arrived 10 minutes early. She looked aged, her face drawn and gray. She ordered coffee but didn't drink it. "Audrey," she said, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled my hand back. "I'm glad you called," she said, retracting her hand. "I have been so worried. You disappeared. Marin is a wreck." "How is she?" I asked coldly. "Is she worried about the felony fraud charges? Or is she just worried that the money train has derailed?" Mom flinched. "You have to stop this. Audrey, this vendetta." "Vendetta?" I repeated. "Mom, she burned me. She broke into my house. She stole my identity. She is working with a con artist to steal Dad's trust. She was manipulated." Mom hissed. "That man. Sterling. He turned her head. He promised her things. She is a victim too." "Audrey." I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had raised me, who had bandaged my scraped knees, who had taught me to be responsible, and I saw the truth. Mom didn't care about the truth. She cared about the picture. She wanted the family photo to look whole. Even if one of the people in it was holding a knife, she was willing to sacrifice my safety to keep her illusion of a happy family intact. "You want me to forgive her?" I said, "I want you to drop it." Mom said, "I want you to come to Sunday dinner. I want you to help her pay off these debts so she can start over. We can use the trust money. It is just sitting there. Audrey, it could save her." I laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. Save her? "Mom, if I give her that money, she will be back in debt in 6 months, and I will be the one with the scars." "She is your sister," Mom cried, tears spilling over. "That has to mean something." "It does," I said. "It means I let her into my house. It means I trusted her not to hurt me. And she used that against me." I stood up. I put a $20 bill on the table for the coffee I didn't drink. "I am not coming to Sunday dinner. Mom, I am not helping her pay for the boyfriend who helped her rob me. And I am not forgiving her. Not to save your feelings. Audrey, please," Mom sobbed. "Goodbye." "Mom." I walked out of the diner. The wind was cold, but I felt a strange heat in my chest. It was the burning of a bridge. It hurt, but it also illuminated the path forward. I drove straight to Elias Thorne's office. "Do it," I said. Elias nodded. He had the papers ready. I signed the resignation. I, Audrey Lewis, hereby resigned as the trustee of the Holleridge Community Trust. But I didn't appoint Mom, and I certainly didn't appoint Marin. I appointed an independent corporate fiduciary, a massive, faceless bank in the city that charged high fees and followed the letter of the law with robotic precision. Transfer the assets. I told Elias, every penny. By doing this, I wasn't just quitting, I was removing the leverage. Marin and Sterling couldn't guilt a corporate bank. They couldn't impersonate me to an institution that required biometric verification. They couldn't stage an accident to get a signature from a board of directors. The money was safe, and because it was safe, I was no longer a target. I was just a woman with a burn scar. I walked out of his office feeling 50 pounds lighter. But rats do not go quietly when you close the pantry. 2 days later, the messages started coming through the cracks. I had blocked Marin, but she found a way. My Aunt Carol, a woman who lived in Florida and had no idea what was happening, sent me a Facebook message. "Audrey, Marin called me crying. She says you have cut her off. She says she is in a bad place. Please call her." Then a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "Marin says you stole her inheritance. Is that true? Not cool. Audrey." And finally, a handwritten note in my mailbox. My home mailbox. which I hadn't checked in a week. It was on Marin's stationery. Just one line. "You took everything from me. I can't be the only one who loses." It was a threat, a vague, whining threat, but a threat nonetheless. I showed it to Elias. "She is unraveling," he said. "And we found something else." He slid a file across his desk. "We tracked Sterling. Or rather, the man calling himself Sterling. His real name is Gerald Finch. He is part of a ring operating out of the tri-state area. They target families with modest trusts, not the super rich, because they have lawyers. But people like you, upper middle class, good credit. How do they find them?" I asked. "They use data scrapers to find public trust filings," Elias explained. "Then they look for the weak link, the black sheep, the addict, the one with debt. They groom them. They tell them they are owed more. They give them a playbook on how to pressure the trustee." I felt a chill. Marin was a participant, yes, but she was also a pawn. She had been profiled, targeted, and weaponized against me. "Does that mean she is innocent?" I asked. "No," Elias said. "She poured the soup. Audrey, she stole the documents. She made the choice. Finch handed her the gun. But she pulled the trigger." I nodded. It didn't make me hate her less. It just made the tragedy more pathetic. The final loose end was work. I went into the office on a Monday morning. I wore a long-sleeved blouse to hide the compression garment on my arm. I sat in the HR conference room with Linda and the legal counsel. I presented the affidavit Marin had signed. I presented the police report I had filed regarding the impersonation. I had filed it against Jane Doe to protect the record without arresting Marin yet. Linda read the documents. She looked pale. "Audrey," she said, we owe you a profound apology. The investigation is closed. The client, Mr. Henderson, has been informed that he was the victim of a spoofing attack. He is staying with the firm." I nodded. "Thank you. We want you back," Linda said. "Full reinstatement, and we would like to discuss a raise. For the stress." I looked around the office, the gray carpet, the fluorescent lights, the place where I had built my safe, boring life. "I will take the reinstatement," I said, "and the raise," but as I walked back to my desk, I realized I didn't care. The job was just a paycheck now. It wasn't my identity. My identity had been forged in a pot of boiling water. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking lot. It was raining. I watched the drops race down the windshield. I thought about calling Mom. I wanted to tell her I was cleared. I wanted her to be proud of me. But I knew what she would say. She would ask about Marin. She would ask if the raise meant I could help with Marin's rent. I put the phone down. I cried for 5 minutes. Hot, angry tears that burned my cheeks. I grieved the mother I kept hoping existed. The one who would protect her child from a predator, even if the predator was her other child. Then I wiped my face. I fixed my makeup in the rearview mirror. "I am done," I whispered to the empty car. I drove to a small Italian restaurant on the edge of town. Sarah and Ben were waiting for me. They had a small cake on the table. It was 3 weeks past my birthday. "Happy re-birthday," Sarah said, raising a glass of wine. I sat down. I looked at their faces. They were tired from work. They were normal. They were kind. They didn't want my money. They didn't want my blood. I ordered a glass of the most expensive red on the menu. "To choosing," I said, raising my glass. "Choosing what?" Ben asked. "Choosing peace over loyalty," I said. We drank, for the first time in a month. I laughed, real laughter. I drove home at 10 o'clock. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and black. I pulled into my driveway. The motion sensor floodlight I had installed flicked on, bathing the driveway in harsh white light. I walked to the front door. I stopped. The heavy-duty deadbolt I had installed. It wasn't engaged. The door was standing open about an inch. I froze. Miller, the security consultant, had said these locks were unpickable. Unless you had a key, but I had the only keys. I pushed the door open with my foot. The alarm didn't sound. It had been disarmed. I walked into the living room. My indoor camera, the new one, the expensive one, was unplugged. It sat on the shelf, its dark eye turned toward the wall. I walked into the kitchen. The lights were off, but the street lamp outside cast a long rectangle of light across the island. Sitting in the center of the counter was a pot. It was the same style as the one from my birthday. Stainless steel, heavy bottom. I walked closer. I didn't tremble this time. I felt a cold, sharp clarity. The pot was clean. It was empty. It shone in the half-light. It wasn't a trap. It was a message. I can still get in. I can still hurt you. You are never safe. They had bypassed the alarm. They had bypassed the locks. They had come in, left the symbol of my trauma, and left. It was Marin, or Finch, or both. They wanted me to scream. They wanted me to run back to the hotel. They wanted me to call Mom and beg for a truce. I looked at the empty pot. I remembered the burn. I remembered the nurse saying it looks like a pore. I reached out and touched the cold metal rim of the pot. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I slowly picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had saved but never used. I watched the pot as the line rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. A voice answered. It was gruff, alert. "This is Miller." "Miller," I said. My voice was steady, flat, dead. "Audrey? What is it? Is the alarm going off?" "No," I said. "The alarm was bypassed. They were here. I am on my way," he said. The sound of keys jingling in the background. "Call the police." "No," I said. I looked at the empty pot. I looked at the darkness of my living room. I wasn't going to hide in a hotel anymore. I wasn't going to wait for the police to take a report and file it away. I am done being hunted. Miller. I hung up. I walked over to the drawer where I kept the new security protocols Miller had given me, the ones for a level red threat. I picked up the phone again and dialed my attorney. "Elias," I said when he answered. "Audrey? It is late, I know." I said, "I am looking at a pot in my kitchen." They broke in again. "I am calling the DA." Elias said, "We are revoking the deal. Do it." I said, "And Elias?" "Yes." "Release the files on Finch, the network. Give it to the press. Burn them down." I hung up. I stood in the center of my kitchen, in the house that they had tried to turn into a prison. I looked at the empty pot. "You wanted a reaction?" I whispered. I picked up the pot. I walked to the back door and opened it. I threw the pot into the backyard. It clattered loudly against the pavement, a chaotic, ugly sound that shattered the silence of the neighborhood. I walked back inside and locked the door. I engaged the secondary deadbolt Miller had installed, the one that only locked from the inside. I picked up my phone one last time. I looked at the contact for Mom. I hit delete. Then I looked at the camera on the shelf. I plugged it back in. The green light blinked to life. I stared into the lens. I'm ready. Thank you so much for listening to Audrey's story. It's a harsh reminder that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from. I'd love to know, what would you have done in Audrey's position? Would you have forgiven Marin? Or was Audrey right to cut them off completely? And where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal and retribution. Don't forget to like and share your thoughts in English. Stay safe out there.